Many years ago in a song, Bob Dylan said, "I'm ashamed to live in a land where justice is a game." That was his song about Reuben Hurricane Carter, the boxing champion who was wrongly convicted of manslaughter. But I used to love that line, that Dylan line, but now I think it needs to be amended because I don't think justice in this country is a game. I think, as one of our guests this week expressed, I agree with him. I think justice in this land is a business. I think it is a very profitable business. It serves the interests of for-profit corporations, and it also serves some other very important functions as well. When 2.2 million Americans are incarcerated, it keeps the unemployment rates low and acts as a kind of brake on potential social organization, potential political organization, potential unrest of various kinds. So it serves its social function. What's more, in places like my old hometown of Utica, New York, mass incarceration provides employment for non-incarcerated populations in places where most other sources of employment have been driven away by the greed of yet other corporations. So justice in this country is, in a very real sense, an industry as well as a game, if you want to call it a game. Now, it's worth reviewing some of the statistics about mass incarceration in this country. The American criminal justice system, as we said, holds more than 2.3 million people. Part of that population is rotating, but just if you want to know the details, that's 1,719 state prisons, 102 federal prisons, 901 juvenile correctional facilities, 3,163 local jails, and 76 Indian country jails, as well as military prisons, immigration detention facilities, civil commitment centers, and prisons on U.S. territory. This is all thanks to prisonpolicy.org, which provides a lot of valuable information. Now, 1 in 5 prisoners in this country is locked up on a drug charge, but it's important to remember that many of the other prisoners who are locked up for other crimes committed those crimes because of drug addiction. And in addition, we have the rate of mental illness in our nation's prison is extremely high. Now, a more humane and sane country, even a country that had the enlightened self-interest of its non-incarcerated population more in mind, would be doing something about those underlying causes, about the epidemic of drug addiction, about untreated mental illness. But that would require money that might need to be diverted from, yes, the very same corporations and wealthy individuals who rule our nation in a virtual oligarchy. And that's not just some lefty radio guy spouting off. That is according to a study conducted under the auspices of Princeton University by 2 political scientists, Martin Gillens and Larry Page, who concluded that the interests of the oligarchical few are almost always heeded, while the interests of the general population rarely are, unless they happen to coincide with some subset of the oligarchy, which occasionally happens. So here we have a situation where we are not addressing the underlying causes. You know, one of the ideas that I thought was crazy when I first heard about it was the abolishment of prisons. I thought that, or abolition of prisons, I thought that that was just too extreme. But once you start looking at the details, what you find is that very few people who are incarcerated would not be better served either by drug treatment or mental health treatment. Now, of course, you always have to worry in a case like that mental health facilities and drug facilities don't become an alternate form of big business and mass incarceration. But the abolition of prisons, I believe, is an achievable or almost achievable vision, and it requires a much further discussion and serious investigation. Now, we also find that people go to jail, that is to say, you know, short term, by and large, over 11 million times a year. Now, that's an enormous turnover. We also have situations like we saw in Ferguson, Missouri, where where the criminal justice system is used to extract money from the most vulnerable segments of our population by hitting them with all sorts of fines for court fees, speeding tickets, riding a bicycle on the sidewalk, all of these forms of financial extraction that are disproportionately addressed toward people of color and towards people who are least in a position to afford it. Why? Because many townships and cities are starved for funds and lack the political will or the ability to tax rich people to get what they want. So they go after the vulnerable and helpless poor instead. So what does this all add up to? For one thing, it adds up to the fact that you and I live in a nation that holds 5% of the world's population, but that also holds 25% of the world's prisoners. That adds up to a country that is mass incarcerating African American young people at rates that are staggering and are clearly racially disproportionate. That shows the same offense, drug offense, for example, committed by a white person is far less likely to result in a prison term, on and on and on. Bottom line, justice is a game and a big business, and it must stop.